Welcome back everybody, my name is Tucker, this is Sporting Logically, and today I'll be breaking down two paths for the Oklahoma City Thunder to take this offseason. The two sides are pretty clear, one in which the team reloads around their current core, and another in which they trade everyone and start from scratch. To be clear, these are not predictions nor are they suggestions. They are simply realistic options for the team that I've come up with after reviewing their assets and salary cap situation. Let's begin with a few things that I will continue to come back to throughout the video. There are three big free agent decisions to look at for the Thunder this summer. First is obviously Paul George, who has a $20 million player option for next season that he'll likely decline to become a free agent, and who has also been linked to any number of destinations. Next is Carmelo Anthony, who has a $27 million early termination option that he'll almost assuredly decline to stay with the team next year. Last is Jeremy Grant, an athletic forward that proved to be extremely valuable at both ends of the floor, even proving to be more effective than Melo at times. To keep things simple, in both of these options, I'm going to assume that George will leave for LA and Anthony will opt into his $27 million salary for next season. Even if George does in fact leave and his $20 million salary comes off the books, the team will still be far over the cap and very close to the luxury tax, severely limiting their roster flexibility this offseason. Even worse is that the team doesn't even have its own first-round pick for this season as a result of the Enes Kanter trade with the Jazz, if you can believe that. Somehow the pick still hasn't been conveyed until this year. Obviously, the focal point of the team and how it moves forward from here is going to revolve around former MVP and discussion lightning rod Russell Westbrook. If they keep him, they'll need to find a way to optimize his play and that of his teammates. While if they look to trade him after George heads to LA, they'll likely do so with the full rebuild in mind. Alright, with the scene now set, let's get started. Option 1. Build around Westbrook. Regardless of your opinion on Russell Westbrook, and there are many, one thing that is clear is that the roster constructed around him since Kevin Durant left OKC has been less than ideal for a player of his talents. A ball-dominant player without a consistent three-point shot, he nonetheless excels at getting to the rim and to the free throw line, which opens up three-point shots for the rest of the roster. The problem is obviously that none of that matters if the guys around him can't make shots. The goal here is to surround Russ with as many shooters and two-way players as possible, and letting him and Steven Adams run the show as one of the better pick-and-roll combinations in the league. The problem is, in all honesty, without cap space, a draft pick, or many valuable players outside of their core that can be used in a trade, there aren't a ton of options for improvement for the Thunder next season in this scenario. Here's the best I could come up with. First, bring back Jeremy Grant on a 3-year, $24 million deal. That might seem a bit high, but the team really can't afford to lose him as one of the few two-way players they have under their own control. Though still not a great three-point shooter, he brings great rebounding and rim protection to the table for a player his size, with the versatility to guard positions 1 through 4. That kind of positional flexibility isn't often found throughout the rest of the roster, so they'll likely be willing to pay a bit of a premium to keep him around. Still just 24 years old, Grant has the potential to continue to grow in the offensive end and expand the range on his jump shot. And as one of the few players the team can count on for internal improvement, his progress will be key to determining the success of the team moving forward. Second, trade Carmelo Anthony to the Rockets for Ryan Anderson. This is something I've mentioned on the channel in the past, but it requires a specific set of circumstances for it to make sense for Houston. If LeBron James doesn't become a Rocket, they'll be looking to add some wing depth, with Trevor Ariza hitting free agency. Rather than offering him a new contract, the team could trade Anderson, who's been basically unplayable in the playoffs, for a buy low candidate in Anthony. Obviously, he won't be able to defend at the same level as Ariza, but he does provide a bit of an offensive punch that allows the team to rely less on Chris Paul and James Harden on that end of the floor. On top of that, Anthony's deal comes off the books in 2019, a year earlier than Anderson's, giving the team some much-needed salary cap relief. For the Thunder, they get some extra perimeter shooting that they desperately need, all while getting rid of a player that is clearly unhappy with the situation in OKC. Anderson can provide exactly the kind of floor spacing the team needs around the Westbrook-Adams combination, and although he obviously isn't a very good defender, nor a great two-way player, that shooting ability he brings to the table will still be of great benefit to the team. Lastly, in the free agency market, I would look to add a shooting specialist with a $5 million taxpayer mid-level exception, and in this case my choice would be Wayne Ellington. Coming off an outstanding season for the Miami Heat, I'm sure his current team would love to bring him back, but their current cap situation is arguably even worse than the Thunder's for next season, and they might not be willing to spend much to bring back the sharpshooter. Bringing in Ellington on a 2-year, $10 million deal would provide the team that last little bit of floor spacing they'll be able to squeeze out of this offseason. With all of these moves accounted for, the team would still be about $3 million over the luxury tax, but that really isn't that bad considering all the moves that were made. In terms of the roster, it certainly isn't a championship level group, and Billy Donovan will have to get clever with his rotations to ensure that there aren't too many non-shooters on the floor at once. But as I said, this is about as good as it gets in this scenario. Option 2. Trade Westbrook for a rebuild. The other option is one that prioritizes the future of the team by trading away Westbrook and any other assets that don't fit a long-term timeline in an effort to get under the luxury tax and build for the future. First, I would try and trade Russ on draft night to the Knicks for Joakim Noah, Courtney Lee, Frank Ntilikina, and the 9th pick in the 2018 draft. For the Thunder, they get back an intriguing young guard, 2 big deals that will expire in 2020 to give them cap flexibility, and a top 10 pick to continue to build towards the future. For the Knicks, this might seem like a big price to pay at first to some fans, but hear me out. The team will get out from under enough contracts next summer to have near max cap space to bring in a 3rd or 4th piece to add to the Westbrook-Porzingis combination, before re-signing the big man to a rookie extension. From there, they can continue to build around that core with complementary players, all while having a playoff caliber roster for this coming season. Next, I would try and trade Steven Adams to the Heat for Hassan Whiteside and Justice Winslow. For the Thunder, they have the time to wait out Whiteside's expiring deal in 2020, which lines up with the contracts they took on in the Knicks deal earlier. As their reward, they get a high upside wing in Winslow that's still just 22 years old and will be allowed to grow alongside the other young assets they received from New York. For the Heat, they get out from under Whiteside's contract, get back a better and younger big man in Adams, all while saving them some money this summer. An important detail for a team that is already far over the luxury tax for this coming season. Giving up Winslow would be a tough pill to swallow, but he's eligible for a rookie extension that they likely wouldn't be able to afford anyway, and they'll have to bite a few bullets to get out of the awful salary cap situation they find themselves in. Okay, that was a lot to go through so quickly, so let's review. First, after taking on all the salaries in the Westbrook trade and accounting for the salary of the player selected with the 9th overall pick, the team would be at about $122 million in payroll for next season, which is a ton for a rebuilding team. Then they take on another $5 million in salary in the Adams deal, putting them at about $127 million for the 2018-19 season, about $27 million over the salary cap and $8 million over the luxury tax line. Obviously, it's less than ideal to pay that much in luxury tax for a team without a hope of making the playoffs, so I need to find a way to shed some money for next season. Luckily for the Thunder, they have just the guy to get rid of. I would try and trade Carmelo Anthony and Jeremy Grant in a sign and trade on the 3-year $24 million deal I mentioned earlier, along with the Celtics' 2018 second round pick via the Thunder to the Bulls in exchange for Cameron Payne. For the Thunder, the benefit here is obvious. They get out from under the luxury tax and are well on their way to getting out of the salary cap hole that has been dug for them in a few seasons. For the Bulls, they get an intriguing young forward on a market value deal for basically nothing as a result of having the cap space to absorb Anthony's deal, one that doesn't hurt them in the long run because it comes off the books in 2019 anyway. The only real issue with the trade is that Melo will have to waive his no-trade clause to make it happen. But in this scenario, the Bulls look to have a better team for next season than the Thunder anyway, and Chicago would seem to be a favorable place for him to live and play next season based off his past trade demands. So it stands to reason that he might waive his NTC. Alright, those are all of the moves in this option. The new Thunder roster is not exactly an inspiring one, but it is one with some young talent to keep around and some to showcase as well, potentially cashing in on a trade with a contender looking for an upgrade at the trade deadline. For example, if Andre Robertson has a strong return from injury, the team could trade him for future assets to a team looking to make a playoff push. The best part about this option, however, is the contract relief it provides. Not accounting for any extensions for the new young players they have on the roster, the team would only have $13 million in guaranteed contracts in the summer of 2020, giving them tremendous flexibility moving forward. Obviously, this is a lot to take in, and a 2-year minimum rebuild isn't the most exciting of options. But with where the Thunder currently stand in terms of salary, this is about as good as you can hope for if you want the team to tear it all down and rebuild by trading away the current core. There's almost no way the team actually goes through with a plan like this now or in the future, but it's still interesting to look at what moves they could make should they want to take on a full rebuild. I do want to point out that normally in these kinds of videos, I would throw out a third option as well. But in this context with this team, in which we're assuming that PG leaves and Melo comes back next year, these are pretty much the only two options. Even if George did return, the team likely wouldn't trade Westbrook, and they would be in an even worse salary cap situation after bringing him back on a max contract. So in all honesty, they wouldn't have much of a choice but to run it back with a similar group as the one they put on the floor this season. And that is the end of the video. I thank you all very much for watching. If you liked it, then leaving a like rating is a great way to let me know, and if you'd like to see more videos just like this, then be sure to subscribe to Sporting Logically for more content every single week. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.